All right. Hey, everyone. Megan Rose Dickey, reporter at TechCrunch.com. Today, wow, that's moving really fast. Going to talk about tech in an era of mass incarceration. This was based on a 5,000-word piece, so I'm going to try to break it down really fast. So this is Kenyatta Leal. He was sentenced to 25 years to life at San Quentin. He was 19 upon entry and was sentenced for constructive possession of drugs. Now, he has now ended up in the tech industry, sort of against all odds. When, I don't believe these slides are advancing, but so, anyway, I think I have it memorized though, but here we go. Okay, so when we spoke, he told me that he didn't really see himself living past the age of 25 or 30. This is not a hilarious topic, just to let you all know. So he didn't really see himself making much out of his life because he saw people around him at a young age dying. And he has since ended up in the tech industry. So next slide, please. Now, in the tech industry, there is a lack of diversity. I don't think that should be news to anyone here today. And oftentimes you will hear tech companies say that it's because there is a pipeline problem. And what they mean by that is that they believe that there's not enough qualified talent in the talent pool. Next slide, please. Now, in my story, which was, again, over 5,000 words, I recommend reading it, I talk about the other pipeline. And at the root of it is systemic racism, which also includes the school-to-prison pipeline and results in a disproportionate number of people of color ending up behind bars. Unfortunately, as of right now, there's not a lot of data regarding how and why these people are ending up behind bars, and as you'll see later, there are some efforts to fix this. Next slide, please. Now, for this story, I spoke with Ana Zamora. She's a criminal justice policy director at the ACLU of Northern California, and she's right. Our criminal justice system is inherently infected with racial bias. And until we really tackle that, we're not going to be able to make a lot of progress. Next slide, please. So, people of color make up 1.5 million of the total 2.2 million incarcerated population in the US. I'll just, let you sit with that for a bit. So she's right. There's obviously something going on. It is infected with racial bias. And next slide, please. A lot of this started back in the 1970s. President Nixon at the time referred to the war on drugs as the biggest epidemic our nation was facing. That resulted in skyrocketing prison populations, and believe it or not, it disproportionately affected people of color, notably black people. Next slide, please. So, black people. We are sent to prison for drug offenses at 10 times the rate of white people, even though white people do more drugs. It's true, look it up. And so check your privilege. All right, and then 36.2% of the prison population is made up of black people, but really make up 12.6% of the US population. Meanwhile, we're arrested at 6 times the rate of white people. Now, there's also, as I mentioned earlier, the school-to-prison pipeline. So youth of color make up 63% of those committed to juvenile facilities, and blacks represent 37% of youth in jails, and that's jails with adults, which is not okay. Now, the criminal justice system is functioning as a racial caste system, and just like the Jim Crow laws, it's working to define what race is, and unfortunately, the way it's working right now, it's trying to define black people as criminals. And it essentially accomplishes the same thing that Jim Crow laws achieved, segregation of black people from mainstream society. And given that the tech industry is part of our mainstream society at this point, it's having an impact on the lack of diversity in tech. Now, the tech industry employs over 6.7 million people, but Black people, if you look across at all these tech companies, 2% Black is kind of the norm, it seems, unfortunately. Those are accurate stats from Facebook and Google. And then the EEOC came out with a report last year that showed 9% of graduates from the top CS programs over the country are from underrepresented minority groups. So something's not really adding up there. These highly qualified people are somehow not ending up in the tech industry. I had a chat with Reverend Jesse Jackson a few months ago, and he has called this repeatedly, diversity in tech, the civil rights movement of our time, meaning access to capital, access to computers, how to make them, how to sell them, how to code, etc. Now, you might remember Kenyatta Leal from earlier. So he went through this program called The Last Mile at San Quentin. Sounds like some of you are familiar with it. And through that program, they teach entrepreneurship to incarcerated individuals. And in the last year, they started teaching people how to code. And in my interviews with him, Kenyatta, who's now at a tech company, was comparing the experiences. He was saying that there's a lot of kind of chaotic energy in prison, and there's a lot of chaotic energy inside tech companies, and everyone's just kind of trying to make the most out of the resources that they're given. And ultimately, it's all about the minimal viable product. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of people like Kenyatta still in the criminal justice system right now who haven't been able to get out. And if you're a Black man, you have a 1 in 3 chance of ending up imprisoned in your life. Compare that to if you're a white man, it's a 1 in 17 chance. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there has been some work done around this lack of data in the criminal justice system, and this is really where, in addition to programs like The Last Mile, this is really where the technology industry can get involved and put resources toward really trying to figure out why there is such a disproportionate number of people of color ending up behind bars. So this program, Open Justice, it was launched out of the now former California Attorney General Kamala Harris's office, and Justin Erlich, his last day at the is probably toward the end of this month. But anyway, so he was special assistant to Kamala Harris at the time, and he talked about the importance of getting the technology industry more involved in these types of criminal justice efforts. So ultimately, the takeaway is that if you're at a tech company, you can think about the ways in which you can use your technological skills to advance the criminal justice system, whether that be from a data and policing perspective or some other area. And also, if you're in a position to hire people, maybe think about hiring formerly incarcerated individuals, knowing that the system has been designed against them. So, thank you.